When I asked Howard Martin, co-author of The HeartMath Solution and the executive vice president of HeartMath, what research has most excited him, he said, the first would be the discovery that the heart influences how the brain functions, and that its language is found in the heart's rhythms. It's exciting to know that by simply shifting our heart's rhythmic beating patterns from chaotic to coherent, we can produce profound and beneficial changes in the brain. These changes open the brain up so we can see the big picture and build new neural pathways that allow us to more easily experience positive emotions. With the power of our own consciousness, we can cause a change in the rate of our heartbeat and create new pathways in the brain that lead to expanded imagination, more creative solutions, and peak performance. The implications for heightened creativity and human performance have not been lost on the corporate world, and companies such as Hewlett-Packard, Shell, Sony, Boeing, and GlaxoSmithKline are using HeartMath training for stress management and enhanced productivity. Martin reported that in a group of 1,500 people from 5 different companies that went through a one-day HeartMath training program, there was a drop in fatigue from 49 to 31% in just 6 weeks. Anxiousness dropped from 35 to 14%, sleeplessness from 29 to 14%, and there were several more changes across 23 different constructs measured over a 6-week period. Steve Stevenson, a senior manager at Boeing, reports that their work with HeartMath gave our team the coherence we needed to come in under budget, on time, with productivity gains of up to 12%. At the individual level, coherence is the synchronization of mind and heart, intellect and emotion, allowing us to find clarity in the midst of chaos. At the global level, coherence is the synthesis of all the parts into one harmonious whole. It is what enables us to choose wisely, to think strategically, to manage our feelings, to communicate effectively, to lead people, and to be more attuned to the needs of others. When our hearts and minds are in harmony, we have more power, more insight, more courage. As Joseph Chilton Pearce writes in The Biology of Transcendence, an unconflicted person has dominion over a conflicted or divided person. We are living in a moment of accelerated collective fear, and according to Pearce, fear of any kind throws us into an ancient survival mentality that shuts down our higher modes of evolutionary awareness. But evolution is always on the prowl, looking for the opportunity to shift us into a higher mode of functioning, he writes. When we come into coherence and employ our heart's intelligence, we defuse the defensive circuit, enlist the creative forebrain, and shift our neural frequency. This breaks the bonds of ancient instinctual behavior and opens us to the possibility of transcendence. That we are shaped by the culture we create makes it difficult to see that our culture is what must be transcended, which means we must rise above our notions and techniques of survival itself if we are to survive, writes Pearce. It means, first of all, that we must rise above our notions of separateness and powerlessness, and open our eyes to all the evidence that proves otherwise. It means we need to consider, as Matthew Fox once suggested, outlawing war as we once outlawed slavery. It means we need to achieve coherence within ourselves so we have the insight and intuition necessary to create new structures as the old ones crumble. While we can't scientifically prove there's such a thing as global consciousness, There is an abundance of research that confirms the power of collective consciousness. Many studies have found that just 1% of a population practicing transcendental meditation, known also as TM, is sufficient to bring about a significant reduction in crime, sickness, and accidents, a phenomenon researchers call the Maharishi effect. An interest among sociologists and criminologists generated by those results led to a highly publicized national demonstration project to reduce violent crime and improve governmental effectiveness. An interest among sociologists and criminologists generated by those results led to a highly publicized national demonstration project to reduce violent crime and improve governmental effectiveness in Washington, D.C., from June 7 to July 30, 1993. According to quantum physicist John Hagelin, author of Manual for a Perfect Government, the $6 million scientific demonstration, which involved 4,000 participants over a period of 2 months, was one of the largest and most rigorously designed sociological experiments in history. The prediction of a 20% drop in crime and the research methodology to be used was presented in advance to a 27-member project review board consisting of scientists, government leaders, and the District of Columbia Police Department. The Coherence Creating Group consisted of 1,000 meditators on June 7 and increased incrementally to 4,000 by the end of the project on July 30th. By the end of the demonstration project, violent crime dropped sharply by more than 23%. Later analysis determined that the drop in crime could not be attributed to temperature, precipitation, changes in police surveillance, weekend effects, or trends in the data. Consistent with the theory that coherence creating groups reduce stress in collective consciousness, it was also predicted in the protocol that other indicators of social stress would show improvements during the project. A separate study found that other sociological variables, such as accidental deaths, emergency room trauma cases, emergency psychiatric calls, and complaints against police, all decreased significantly during the course of the project. Hagelin reports on well-documented experiments in the Middle East of groups of TM meditators who were able to produce a 34% reduction in war intensity and a 76% reduction in war deaths during the Lebanon War. In 2003, the highly respected Journal of Offender Rehabilitation devoted all 4 quarterly issues entirely to studies demonstrating that the TM program is effective in treating and preventing criminal behavior, as well as reducing international conflicts and terrorism. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake has also demonstrated in a number of studies that we can assist each other's learning across distances without any external interaction or communication. In one study, for instance, a group of individuals completed a newly created crossword puzzle, and their average completion times were recorded. The same puzzle was then broadcast to millions via television for the viewers at home to complete. Subsequently, a new group, who had not seen the puzzle at all, finished it significantly faster than the original group, suggesting that as a result of so many individuals having done the puzzle, knowledge of the puzzle was somehow etched into the field of collective consciousness, making it increasingly easier for others to solve. Peter Tompkins and Christopher Bird offer fascinating accounts of the consciousness and matter in their book, The Secret Life of Plants. One experiment performed by a medical doctor and chemist involved a male subject who had brought a philodendron he had nursed from a seedling and cared for tenderly. The two scientists attached a polygraph to the plant and asked the owner a series of questions, instructing him to give false answers to some of them. The plant had no trouble indicating through the galvanometer which questions were answered falsely. To see if a plant could display memory, 6 blindfolded polygraph students drew folded strips of paper from a hat. One of them contained instructions to root up, stamp on, and thoroughly destroy one of the 2 plants in a room. The criminal was to commit the crime in secret. No one knew his identity, and only the second plant would be a witness. When the surviving plant was attached to a polygraph, the students paraded before it one by one. The plant gave no reaction to 5 of them, but when the actual culprit approached, the meter went wild. Even robots have been documented responding to the power of thought. 80 different groups were tested in one experiment involving a robot and baby chicks. A robot was sent into a room full of baby chicks in broad daylight, and its movements were all observed to be random in nature. Knowing that the chicks prefer well-lit rooms, the researchers then devised an experiment where they turned off all the lights, leaving the chicks in the dark. They then sent in a robot carrying a lighted candle. In 71% of the cases, the robot spent excessive time in the vicinity of the chicks. Its former random movement were now affected by the desire of the chicks for its light. There is mind in all matter. Physicist Max Planck wrote, "All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force, which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. The who that we are is one with this very matrix. We are the vessels through which it operates, as the light bulb is a vessel for electricity. The force comes through us, taking whatever shape we give it. Whether one is a terrorist or a piano tuner, a murderer or a mystic, the very same force is behind each individual, holding the atoms and cells together, unifying us in the web of existence. As the poet Dylan Thomas put it, the force that through the green fuse drives the flower, drives my green age." When Einstein reached the conclusion that something deeply hidden had to be behind things, it is this force he was talking about. When the Indian mystic Sri Aurobindo wrote, "That within us which seeks to know and to progress is not in the mind, but something behind it, which makes use of it," he too was referring to the great consciousness of which we are a part and to whom we belong. In his book, The Great Work, cultural historian and visionary ecologist Thomas Berry writes, "We must consciously will the further stages of evolutionary process. Our responsibility is to be present to the earth in its next sequence of transformations. While we were unknowingly carried through the evolutionary process in former centuries, the time has come when we must, in some sense, guide and energize the process ourselves. We are evolving into beings who understand the necessity of wholeness and the urgency of balance. In order to reach our spiritual maturity as individuals and as a human family, we must root ourselves as deeply in the heart as the mind, becoming as fluent in feelings as we are in facts. Our lives stem from our beliefs, and if our beliefs are not informed by affection, if they lack the heft of emotion, the grace of passion, they are nothing but a barren field of brain waves. Emotions are what unite the mind and the body, and all honest emotions are positive emotions, according to neuroscientist Candace Pert. Every second, a massive information exchange is occurring in your body. Imagine each of these messenger systems possessing a specific tone, humming a signature tune. If we could hear this body music with our ears, the sum of the sounds would be the music we call the emotions. They are cellular signals that are involved in the process of translating information into physical reality, literally transforming mind into matter, she writes. When the biochemicals of our emotions are flowing freely through our bodies, what we feel is happiness. Bliss is our default mode. To sustain it, what we have to do is allow the flow, all the while knowing we're conditioned not to do so. Until we get in the habit, it feels as if we're going against the grain, and we are. We're taking back authority over our own lives. We're forging an identity that's integrated, dynamic, energetically charged. We're unfolding and liberating our creative imagination, firing more neurons, sparking more ideas. Robert Grudin, in his book The Grace of Great Things, reminds us, creativity is dangerous. We cannot open ourselves to new insight without endangering the security of our prior assumptions. We cannot propose new ideas without risking disapproval and rejection. Creative achievement is the boldest initiative of mind, an adventure that takes its hero simultaneously to the rim of knowledge and the limits of propriety. Its pleasure is not the comfort of the safe harbor, but the thrill of the reaching sail. Thought leaders become thought leaders by endangering the security of their prior assumptions. It is the only pathway out of our conditioned thought patterns which limit us immensely and lead more often to chaos than coherence. Thought leaders are bridge builders who connect the local and the global, the past and the future, the heart and the mind. They know the power of emotion and they employ it confidently and courageously. They do not separate the metrics from the meanings, the figures from the feelings. They see themselves as a whole that is a part of a larger whole, and it is to this larger whole that they dedicate their lives. And if one wonders where meaning comes from, where joy and passion and purpose come from, it is from this one grand gesture of service to the whole. The other day, I was photographing tide pools at the ocean's edge. The waves crashed onto the shore, ruffled their way across the rocks, and swirled and bubbled into the shallow sandstone pools beneath my feet. I hovered over a patch of moss-covered rock and photographed a piece of the action. When the photos were developed, I was stunned. Every single tiny bubble I caught in my lens reflected back an image of myself. Everything I looked back at me and contained me. This is the marriage of local and global. It is all one as we are. All we have to do is remember and live in that awareness. Chapter 12. Commerce with a Conscience. I drove by a cement truck the other day, and the mixer was churning away as it rattled down the road. The logo on its side read, "Find a hole and fill it." This may become the mantra of the millennium, as companies and cultural creatives continue to find ways to blend profit with purpose. When CBS MarketWatch's lead reporter Bambi Francisco asked venture capitalist Michael Moritz what it would take to become the next Google, Yahoo, or Cisco, Moritz's response had a "find a hole and fill it" ring to it. And Moritz, referred to as the hottest VC in the world, is no neophyte. Through Sequoia Capital, he has helped finance companies that now make up more than 10% of the market cap of NASDAQ. We try to anticipate a need that customers have, whether they're consumers or enterprise customers. We try to anticipate making an investment in a company that seems to be solving a problem that's brewing. Not a problem that's well recognized, but a problem that's brewing and that's only going to get bigger, said Moritz in the MarketWatch interview. Lucky for us, the United Nations has identified the world's most pressing problems and established the Millennium Development Goals to help us solve them. A perfect match for creative entrepreneurs looking for holes to fill. Some of the most brilliant solutions of the day are coming out of thinkers who have the whole world in their view and are making bedfellows of purpose and profitability, commerce and social conscience. Studies of Gen Xers and Gen Yers published in Workforce Management magazine showed that more than 90% of them believe that helping others is more important than helping oneself. The workforce coming up is altruistic, collaborative, and community-minded. They're looking for balance in their own lives and aspiring to create more balance in the world. In an article in Worthwhile magazine, Kevin Sullivan quotes from a letter written by Andrew Young, an MBA student at Northwestern's Kellogg School. I am a second-year MBA student at Kellogg. I am one of growing numbers of MBAs that have a career focus on doing good in the world. We are learning not how to make millions of dollars, but how to change the lives of millions of people. The tools of business appeal to me because they are the tools of mobilizing and organizing large amounts of resources. In my lifetime, I hope to end poverty for as many people as possible. There are 850 million people in the world, mostly children, who are so poor that they are chronically malnourished. The best answer the world has come up with is $10 billion in annual food and medicine donations. Despite decades of pouring aid into Africa, there are still more hungry people than ever. The paradox is that the majority of these hungry people are actually farmers capable of growing food for themselves. They are just using ancient agricultural techniques, which are not very productive. I am very interested in finding ways to intelligently provide fertilizer and commercial seed to these farmers, which has the potential to increase their crop yields by at least 400%. I am interested in a permanent solution to their poverty problem, not just in repeatedly band-aiding their hunger and health problems. I will be starting a demonstration project in Kenya in December with about 20 families to prove that their crop yields can be dramatically increased and that this one-time intervention can result in a permanent path out of poverty. Andrew Young is going to the root of the problem, which is the only sane and useful approach. And so do the Millennium Development Goals, which address the very origins of the crises we face as a global community. These goals, adopted by 189 nations in 2000, are an invitation for original thinking on a global scale. Despite whatever criticisms one might have about the United Nations, this plan has galvanized people to work together, creating partnerships in government, industry, and civic society. Its objectives are simple enough to be understood and reasonable enough to be supported by people from Calcutta to Chicago, Brussels to Bucharest. It's as if the UN were a doctor saying to a person with a life-threatening disease, "Here is an 8-point plan. If you follow these directions, you can heal yourself." The question to the patient is, do you have the will to live? And the question to the global community is the same. The Millennium Development Goals are based on a global partnership calling for developing countries to get their own houses in order with the support of developed nations. These goals are measurable, achievable, and time-bound, projected to be met by 2015. Progress toward these goals has already been significant, and once the business community recognizes the opportunity to profit through service to these goals, once it applies its ingenuity and results-driven expertise to the problems, we may enter into a new phase of commerce that is people-focused and profit-driven, cost-effective and compassionate. We made one giant step from win to win-win and are about to make another to win, win, win. It's good for me, it's good for you, it's good for our children. The Millennium Development Goals and their targets offer us the greatest creative challenge of our times. They are as follows. Number 1, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, reducing by half the number of people living on less than $1 a day. Global poverty rates are falling thanks to Asia's progress in the matter. The number of people living on less than $1 a day dropped by nearly 250 million from 1990 to 2001, a period of rapid economic growth. In more than 30 countries, hunger was reduced by at least 25% during the last decade. But millions more people have sunk into poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. What's needed is an increase in agricultural output. Innovative approaches to fertilization and irrigation in places like Bangladesh are yielding tremendous results and helping small farmers grow more food and climb out of poverty. Number 2, achieve universal primary education. 5 regions are already close to universal enrollment in primary education, though in sub-Saharan Africa, fewer than 2/3 of children are enrolled in primary school. And 2/3 of the 130 million children currently not in school are girls. Primary and lower secondary education helps reduce poverty by increasing the productivity of the poor, by reducing unplanned pregnancies and improving health, and by equipping people with the skills they need to participate fully in the economy. Oxfam estimates that for Africa to achieve universal primary education, some $3 billion per year would be needed. IKEA is one business that stepped up to the plate and donated €1 for each soft toy sold in its 200 stores from November through December of 2005 to support UNICEF and Save the Children programs, contributing more than $1 million. In July 2003, IKEA launched a similar campaign and generated more than $2.8 million for children in Angola, Uganda, Russia, and China. Number 3, promote gender equality and empower women. In countries where resources and school facilities are lacking, a choice must often be made in families between sending a girl or a boy to school. Girls tend to lose out, but the gender gap is closing in primary school enrollment in the developing world. Targeted interventions can go a long way toward getting girls into school and encouraging them to stay there. These include providing safe transportation to and from school, separate toilets for girls and boys, and removing gender stereotyping from the classroom. Education for girls is a crucial step in ensuring women's partnership in local and global decision-making. And although women's representation in national parliaments has been steadily increasing since 1990, women still occupy only 16% of seats worldwide. Number 4, reduce child mortality by 2/3 for children under 5. 11 million children a year, 30,000 a day, die from preventable or treatable causes. Most of these lives could be saved by expanding low-cost prevention and treatment measures. Among the diseases that can be eradicated by immunization, measles is the leading cause of child deaths. A safe, effective, and relatively inexpensive vaccine has been available for over 40 years. Still, measles strikes 30 million children a year. Global coverage of measles immunization has risen slowly, but about 1/3 of all children are still unprotected in the sub-Sahara and Asia. Number 5, improve maternal health, reducing by 3/4 the maternal mortality ratio. More than 500,000 women die each year during pregnancy or childbirth. Some progress has been made in reducing maternal deaths in developing regions, but not in the countries where giving birth is most risky. Universal access to reproductive health care, including family planning, is the starting point for maternal health. It is particularly important for addressing the needs of the 1.3 billion young people about to begin their reproductive lives. Currently, 200 million women have an unmet need for safe and effective contraceptive services. Number 6, halt and begin to reverse the spread of HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. AIDS has become the 4th largest killer worldwide, leaving 15 million AIDS orphans in Africa. It's estimated that by the end of the decade, 1 out of every 5 children in Namibia will be an orphan. In India, there are 4 to 8 million people infected with HIV, and that figure is expected to rise to 15 million in the coming decade. Surveys in sub-Saharan Africa have found that only 21% of young women and 30% of young men know the basics about how to avoid infection. Surveys of young women in Southeast Asia show even lower levels of knowledge. By the time you finish hearing this paragraph, 100 people will have died of a preventable infectious disease, and half of them will be children under 5. Malaria and tuberculosis together kill nearly as many people each year as AIDS and represent a severe drain on national economies. 90% of malaria deaths occur in sub-Saharan Africa, where prevention and treatment efforts are being scaled up. Thailand and Uganda have shown that infection rates can be reversed with vision and leadership. All 3 of these diseases can be largely controlled through education, prevention, and treatment. Number 7, ensure environmental sustainability, including reducing by half the people without access to clean drinking water, reversing the loss of environmental resources, and achieving significant improvement in the lives of 100 million slum dwellers. Access to safe drinking water has increased, but half the developing world still lacks toilets or other forms of basic sanitation. Nearly 1 billion people worldwide live in urban slums because the growth of the urban population is outpacing improvements in housing and the availability of productive jobs. The proportion of population using safe sources of drinking water in the developing world rose from 71% in 1990 to 79% in 2002. Number 8, develop a global partnership for development. In an interdependent world economy, open avenues for trade, an accelerated transfer of technology, and improved employment opportunities for young people in the developing world are needed for poor countries to evolve in sustainable ways. Microcredit loans are proving to be a successful means to promoting self-sufficiency, financial skills, personal responsibility, and financial independence, particularly for women in developing countries. In past decades, according to the World Bank, microfinance has evolved from the provision of small loans to help start businesses to a vision of creating financial systems where none exist. Currently, it is estimated that only about 3% of the 75 million poor households in India who need access to credit receive financial services from the formal financial institutions and the microfinance sector put together. The potential for the microfinance industry throughout the world is vast. Close to 96% of Grameen Bank's microfinance loans have gone to women, and the repayment rate is over 90%. On the home front, according to the latest census figures, 35.9 million Americans now live below the poverty threshold, a 1.3 million increase over last year's numbers. On average, 1 out of every 3 Americans are officially classified as living in poverty at least 2 months out of the year. Since 2000, the number of poor Americans has grown by more than 4 million. 42% of families living in cities and 30% of families residing in rural areas fall short of basic family budget thresholds. The percent of survey respondents who indicated that poverty is a problem in the United States has remained between 87% and 90% since 2000. More than anything, what we have to stretch is our imagination. First, reflect on the fact that helping the poor is actually helping everyone. If you think for a moment about real worldwide security, what do you think would be most likely to contribute to it? Better weapons and a stronger army, or decent jobs and working wages for the millions of young people maturing to working age? If you think about the best ways to build your company's reputation, consider the flurry of media attention Hyperion got when it launched its Drive Clean to Drive Change program and gave employees $5,000 toward the purchase of a hybrid car. That kind of positive press you can't buy. What if companies encouraged their employees to brainstorm on how the company could positively impact just one of the 8 Millennium Development Goals? How would employees feel about being part of an organization that decided to be part of a grand solution? Think of the energy and creativity that could be stimulated out of an inquiry into the question, how can we profit from doing good in this world? All the research shows that people are looking for meaning and value in the workplace, and here's an opportunity to provide it. The field of microcredit finance alone is offering a plethora of ideas for ways businesses and people can get involved on a personal level. When Deborah Lindholm wanted to inspire people in her San Diego community to support the financial independence of impoverished women, she started the Foundation for Women in 1997. Women joined the organization because it offered a sense of community. And as they began to network, several programs were created that offered assistance to youth, to women with life-threatening diseases, and to homeless women. The foundation raised money through a variety of creative programs, and since its inception has facilitated the opening of a microcredit bank every year. To date, we have opened 5 banks to service the poorest of the poor in Tamil Nadu, India, said Lindholm in a recent interview. We reached our first goal by funding 2 banks, a $35,000 commitment, in just 16 months by December 1999, and have gone on each year to expand the work. Each bank is servicing 2,500 women and their families. Realizing the connection between education and the eradication of poverty, the Foundation for Women expanded their reach and built a school for 500 children of the microcredit borrowers. On the day of its dedication, over 10,000 women arrived to celebrate. The Foundation is now collaborating with 2 medical programs in Niger, Africa, to provide microcredit access to women there. And they have also initiated 2 local microcredit projects in San Diego County. Investment groups around the country are also providing people with ways to invest in microcredit and make a profit while making a difference. Axion Investment Funds and the Calvert Foundation have socially responsible investment programs that support community development organizations, affordable housing, microcredit, and social enterprise programs across the country and around the world. When American agricultural researcher Norman Borlaug was asked what wealthy countries should do to reduce hunger, he said the long-range solution would be in revolutionizing agricultural production among subsistence farmers. To increase food supply, create jobs, and generate new income from selling excess grain. One simple device that has helped farmers become more efficient is the human-powered treadle pump, which can irrigate half an acre of vegetables and costs only $25, according to an article by Paul Pollock in the Scientific American. Pollock is the 71-year-old founder of International Development Enterprises and has spoken with thousands of small farmers in the developing world and spent many years designing inexpensive tools that would meet their needs. Pollock's first big success was bringing the treadle pump to Bangladesh. It works like a Stairmaster, allowing farmers to pump shallow groundwater directly onto the crops using the energy of their legs. Over 1.5 million Bangladeshi farmers have purchased these pumps and have netted an additional $100 to $500 more a year from their crops, a huge gain in a country where the per capita income is $300. An MD and former psychiatrist, Pollock put together a $3 million portfolio in 1981, vowed never to take a job only for money, cashed out, and started IDE to develop and market low-cost, low-tech irrigation devices for small farmers. The litmus test for his products was that the farmer could recover the cost of the device within 1 season. According to Pollock, who believes that the problem of rural poverty in the developing world boils down to what happens on quarter-acre plots. So much development work is focused on macroeconomics and increasing GDP per capita, he said in a recent Forbes magazine interview. Until the development community realizes that the solution to poverty lies in increasing the wealth of small plot farmers, it will continue to fail. Pollock's IDE operates on a $10 million annual budget, raised through individual donations and grants from organizations like USAID and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. He hires people from the countries he's working in who recruit manufacturers to build the irrigation devices. Then he creates an ingenious guerrilla marketing program to get the word out. In one state, the program hired troubadours to travel to rural villages singing the pump's praises. They also produced a Bollywood-style movie featuring a family whose fortunes were turned around by the pump. To Pollock, the key is affordable design. According to him, 90% of the people who design things work on the problems of the world's richest 5%. And there is an enormous need to design things that will create a market for the poorest 4 billion people. Ashoka is one organization that is working on that idea. Founded by Bill Drayton, a former McKinsey & Company consultant and assistant administrator at the Environmental Protection Agency, Ashoka's mission is to shape an entrepreneurial citizen sector by investing in social entrepreneurs who have innovative ideas for change in their community. Learning to serve the poor through market-based approaches involves an acute learning curve for most companies, particularly large multinationals, as well as for many citizen sector organizations. Traditionally, what's made it difficult for businesses and CSOs to serve low-income markets is the limited purchasing power of individual clients. The new niche of high-volume businesses based on small transactions, and a lack of awareness about the unique human and social capital that low-income communities possess. Although the purchasing power of individuals in these communities may be low, their collective purchasing power represents a significant market opportunity, as long as the cost of items is not prohibitive. A few examples of successful social entrepreneurs and Ashoka Fellows include Rebecca Villalobos of Costa Rica, who developed a multi-million-dollar operation that delivers vision care services to hundreds of thousands of consumers, irrespective of their income levels. By using a multi-tiered pricing system that allows consumers to pay according to their ability, Villalobos avoids discriminating against consumers on the basis of price. David Green is another entrepreneur who is making medical technology and healthcare accessible to millions of low-income citizens. In collaboration with Seva Foundation and Aravind Eye Hospital, Green established AudioLab in India, the first nonprofit manufacturing facility in a developing country to produce affordable intraocular lenses to ameliorate cataracts, the main cause of blindness. AudioLab is now one of the largest manufacturers of these lenses in the world, with sales of more than 700,000 units per year to 86 countries. AudioLab's selling price is $4 per lens, compared to over $100 in the U.S. While hearing aids usually sell for $1,500 per unit, theirs are sold for prices ranging from $0 to $200. The manufacturing cost is $50. AudioLab is financially sustainable from sales revenues, and Green is in the process of taking his concept global through a combination of business and social partnerships. Ashoka Fellow Fabio Rosa is working on the issue of electricity for the poor. With no credit option available, millions of families living in rural areas go without electricity in spite of the fact that an appropriate technology exists. When Rosa decided to explore new business models for bringing power to these families, he began with a market research study that showed almost 70% of the families were spending at least $11 a month on non-renewable energy sources such as kerosene, candles, batteries, and liquid petroleum gas to bring light and power into their homes. Rosa's plan was to lease his solar energy service for close to the same cost as people were spending on these inferior, non-renewable energy sources. He developed a basic photovoltaic solar home system that could be rented for $10 a month plus an initial installation fee, a little more than what people were already spending on non-renewable forms of energy. Started in 2004, his company estimates that it will reach a break-even point at the end of year 4 with 6,000 customers. Let's look at the water situation for a minute. As it stands today, half of us do not have access to clean water. 5,000 children die every day from waterborne illnesses. In an article in Technology Review, writer Kevin Bullis interviews Segway inventor Dean Kamen about his latest product, an energy-efficient electrical generator and water purifier that could put power and clean water in the hands of rural villagers in poor countries. A few years ago, when Kamen was working on an electric generator for underdeveloped villages, he noticed that it produced about 1,000 watts of waste heat. Kamen adapted his device to use that extra heat to distill the water by boiling and condensing it. The results were a low-power, low-maintenance device that costs around $1,000 to manufacture and makes 10 gallons of drinkable water an hour. Tests in Bangladesh showed that the generator, fueled by gas produced by local cow's dung, can produce enough power to run the purifier. Imagine the opportunities here for a business to mass produce this at a much lower cost, for a local organization to get involved with the marketing, for village entrepreneurs to profit from gathering the fuel, and for communities to end up with safe water and power. These are the kinds of connections thought leaders are envisioning and creating, and these are the kinds of problems they are committed to solving. The business world itself is undergoing profound and dynamic changes, reshaping its contours to match the mindsets of an evolving public. As more and more people wake up to the fact that we're all in this together, all cells of this one living, breathing planet, more are insisting on across-the-board behaviors that protect and preserve it. Thought leaders Amory B. and L. Hunter Lovins, who co-authored Natural Capitalism with Paul Hawken, are co-founders of the Rocky Mountain Institute, an entrepreneurial nonprofit with a focus on efficiency. As consultants and advisors to many of the world's largest corporations, they have helped shape the futures of the electricity, oil, real estate, automobile, and semiconductor sectors, showing businesses how to profit by doing what they do more efficiently. Their 4,000 square foot house in Snowmass, Colorado, which is also home to their Rocky Mountain Institute, has no conventional heating system, though winter temperatures there dip to 40 degrees below zero. It was designed so efficiently that it consumes barely more electricity than a single 100-watt bulb. Solar cells generate 5 to 6 times that much electricity, which the Lovins sell back to the utility. In an article called Harnessing Corporate Power to Heal the Planet, the Lovins share the principles of natural capitalism and offer several examples of how today's environmental challenges hold many profit-enhancing opportunities for pioneering companies. The first principle of natural capitalism is to radically increase resource efficiency, which not only increases profits, but solves most of the environmental dilemmas facing the world today. The others are to eliminate the concept of waste by closing the loops of materials flows, to shift the focus of the economy from processing materials and making things to creating service and flow, and to reverse the destruction of the planet by instituting programs of restoration that invest in natural capital. The article mentions that Southwire Corporation, an energy-intensive maker of cable, rod, and wire, halved its energy per pound of product in 6 years and accumulated savings that roughly equaled the company's profits during that period. Company officials estimated that the energy efficiency effort probably secured 4,000 jobs at 10 plants in 6 states that were jeopardized by competitive market forces. Dow, Louisiana operations implemented over 900 worker-suggested energy-saving projects during the period 1981 to 1993, with average annual returns on investment of over 200%. Both returns and savings rose in later years, even after the accumulated annual savings from the projects had passed $100 million. Practicing commerce with a conscience has its upside, though it still seems counterintuitive to those who haven't tried it. According to Lovins, it's whole system thinking that lights the bulb. For example, in the world of real estate, typical tract home developments drain stormwater in expensive underground sewers. Village Homes, an early solar housing development in Davis, California, instead installed natural drainage swales, which saved $800 per house and provided more green space. The company then used the saved money to pay for edible landscaping that provided shade, nutrition, beauty, community focus, and crop revenues that paid the homeowners assessments and a community center. The development includes 220 single-family homes, 20 apartments, and a cooperative house, most incorporating solar design features and solar hot water. Business space is included in the community center, and an inn was recently completed. The primary focus of the development plan was on community building. Shared ownership of common areas, shared laundry space for some units, shared and community gardens, community fruit and nut trees and vineyards, and bicycling and walking orientation were all important. In a study comparing village homes to surrounding contemporary developments, the residents of village homes knew 42 people in their neighborhood, compared to 17 in other areas. Village homes, once perceived as an oddity, is now the most desirable real estate in town, with market values $10 to $15 per square foot over average. One of the most evolutionary principles of natural capitalism calls for a quantum leap in our thinking about business. We have to let go of an old idea and make space for a new possibility. This is a conscious, evolutionary act. We've known for a long time that brain cells that fire together wire together. Our thought patterns become habituated. Neurons fire in the same way over and over again, and our ideas eventually lose their plasticity and congeal into ideologies that soon need defending. To think originally is to connect the dots that have not been connected before and blaze new trails through the meadows of the mind. It is opening up to the future that is pulling us forward just as certainly as gravity pulls us downward. Original thinking calls for release of a certain kind, for we must let go of what we thought was true. But it leads us to a wiser way, a clearer path, and to choices that are good for all living things. When the Lovins speak of natural capital, they talk about shifting our focus of the economy from processing materials and making things to creating service and flow. But it's a new concept, and there is no neural pathway for it. We need to see images of it in our mind. We need to hear stories about it. We need to be able to imagine what it would look like and feel like to be creating service and flow. When Cemex, the second largest cement manufacturer in the world, decided to move from selling materials to selling solutions, they sent a team to live in a slum for several months. The point was to gain insight into the community and to explore the decision-making process of low-income families interested in building or upgrading their home. As a result, Cemex created Patrimonio Ahoy, meaning property today, one of the most successful housing programs in the world. Would-be home builders pay about $14 a week for 70 weeks. What the roughly $1,000 buys is consultations and inspections by Cemex staff architects and scheduled deliveries of materials divided into building phases that cover the 70 weeks. Cemex is basically putting building materials in customers' hands on terms tailored to the way they work and build. In return, the company saw its low-income partners deconstruct the myth of the irresponsible poor. 99.2% of the $42 million worth of materials that Cemex has distributed is being paid for on time, according to the company. Since its inception, Patrimonio Ahoy has sponsored the building of 10,000 homes in Mexico and launched a similar project in Colombia. Cemex involved itself in the community to discern how it could best deliver solutions and services to the people most in need. By making its building materials easier to buy, the company opened up a market segment it once believed was impenetrable and not profitable enough to pursue. Now the company predicts that within 5 years of the program's inception, over 1 million Mexican families will benefit from this new way of doing business. Even with the current pause in growth, it is adding new families at the rate of 2,000 per month, and sales are growing by 15% monthly. This is original thinking at its best. It's an indicator of how we can evolve the very concept of capitalism by pursuing the question, how can we profit with our customers, not just from them? Adam Smith used the term the invisible hand to demonstrate how self-interest guides the most efficient use of resources in a nation's economy, with public welfare coming as a byproduct. But having evolved some 230 years since his Wealth of Nations, we're discovering that the most original and profitable solutions emerge when we take a more holistic approach and ask at once, what is best for us, what is best for the public and what is best for the planet. Corporations that are asking these questions, that have adopted the notion that waste is food, are gaining immensely, and not just profits, but credibility in the eyes of a watchful public. They're building good corporate karma, and it's paying off. The concept of restructuring business relationships so that the provider and customer both profit by finding efficient and mutually beneficial solutions is a quantum leap away from older business models, but it is the wave of the future. In the old model, the company wants to provide more products more often, which leads to higher cost and higher waste and is exactly the opposite of what the customer wants. In the new model, customers get the value and service they desire at a lesser cost and with no waste. For example, Carrier, the world's largest manufacturer of air conditioners, is shifting its focus from selling air conditioners to leasing comfort. They are making more efficient and durable equipment, giving Carrier greater profits while its customers get better comfort at lower cost. Plus, they are also aware that in more efficient buildings, less cooling yields the same comfort. So they are collaborating with other firms that can improve lighting, glazings, and other building systems for higher energy efficiency. This is like watching evolution in action. And Interface Carpet is doing something similar. They are shifting their focus from selling carpet to leasing floor covering services. People want to walk on and look at carpet, not own it. They can obtain these services at much lower cost if Interface owns the carpet and remains responsible for keeping it clean and fresh. For a monthly fee, Interface will visit regularly and replace the 10 to 20% of the carpet tiles that show 80 to 90% of the wear. This reduces the mass flow of carpets to landfills by about 80% and provides better service at lower cost. It also increases net employment, eliminates the disruption since worn tiles are seldom under furniture, and turns a capital expenditure into an operating lease. Interface's new Selenium product provides floor covering that is almost completely remanufacturable into identical carpet, cutting their net flow of needed materials and energy by 97%. It is also non-toxic, virtually stain-proof, easy to clean with water, 4 times as durable, 1/3 less materials intensive, and renewably produced. And what rewards has this higher level thinking reaped? In their 4-year quest to turn waste into profit, Interface has doubled their revenues, tripled their operating profits, and nearly doubled employment. Its latest $250 million revenue came from mining internal waste, with no increase in energy or materials inputs. This is natural capitalism at its best. We are getting there, slow but sure, like those cement trucks determined to find a hole and fill it. We know from these stories that we are not alone, and that evolution is sweeping us forward in its own time, on its own terms. The best we can do, any of us, is to remember the karmic truth that we reap what we sow. Abundance out, abundance in. Compassion out, compassion in. Great urgencies are upon us, and opportunities for service abound. The Millennium Development Goals are the hugest imagining humankind has ever undergone, the most profound and honorable of all our collective thoughts. And we can succeed. We are succeeding. There are thousands more stories just like these that we never hear, but they are happening in accordance with our vision, in accordance with our will. We are the earth. repairing itself, and we will not fail. Chapter 13. The Triple Bottom Line. I was trying out a new hairstylist and loving the extra head massage Alan delivered along with my shampoo. "Nice touch," I said as he squirted conditioner into his hand. "Isn't this scent fabulous?" he said, rubbing it into my scalp. "I just love these products." I replied, breathing in the fresh scent of rosemary and mint. Dreamy. By the time he started cutting, his contagious vitality had aroused my curiosity. "You seem pretty chirpy today. I must be your last customer," I said, noticing it was after 5. "Yes, but I'm driving up to L.A. to teach a class this weekend," he said, stretching for a portfolio of photographs he'd been collecting from his classes. "I teach people how to work with the new colors. They're magnificent and 97% natural. Everything Aveda has is plant-derived. I just love this company. They're so triple bottom line." "Triple bottom line," I repeated. "Yeah, they don't just care about profit. They care about the people they do business with and the environment. People, planet, profits. Triple bottom line." As it turns out, he learned the term from his partner, who was studying for an MBA. "Here's the greatest thing," he said. "Aveda is totally committed to environmental sustainability, and many of the ingredients we use are organically grown by tribes in the Brazilian Amazon. We're helping them save their rainforest. As long as we buy what they harvest from their trees, they don't have to sell the land to ranchers. So their communities stay intact, the rainforests are protected, and we end up with the greatest products in the world. Win, win, win," he said triumphantly. The Amazonian rainforest covers over 1 billion acres, and 1/5 of the world's fresh water is in the Amazon basin. If Amazonia were a country, it would be the 9th largest in the world. The Amazon rainforest has been described as the lungs of our planet because it provides the essential environmental world service of continuously recycling carbon dioxide into oxygen. More than 20% of the world's oxygen is produced in the Amazon rainforest. According to the National Cancer Institute, tropical rainforest plants provide 1/4 of today's pharmaceuticals and 70% of the plants useful in the treatment of cancer. There are at least 300 new drugs that still await discovery in the rainforest, with a potential value of $3 to $4 billion to a private pharmaceutical company and as much as $147 billion to society as a whole. Despite the fact that rainforests are an integral part of our own personal ecosystem, they are being treated by some businesses as a third world commodity and, as a result, are disappearing faster than any other natural community on Earth. More than 50 million acres of rainforest, an area the size of England, Scotland, and Wales, are destroyed or seriously degraded each year. In 1950, about 15% of the Earth's land surface was covered by rainforest. Today, more than half has already gone up in smoke. And if deforestation continues at current rates, scientists estimate nearly 80 to 90% of tropical rainforest ecosystems will be destroyed by the year 2020. Every day, about 90 acres of rainforest land is deforested for timber, paper products, and cattle grazing. For every quarter-pound fast food hamburger that comes from the rainforest, 55 square feet of rainforest is destroyed. That's about the size of a small kitchen for one hamburger. Hardly a good return on investment. The latest statistics show that rainforest land converted to cattle operations yields the landowner $60 per acre. If timber is harvested, the land is worth $400 per acre. However, if medicinal plants, fruits, nuts, rubber, chocolate, and other renewable and sustainable resources are harvested, the land will yield the landowner $2,400 per acre. And this is where Aveda comes in. Recognizing that it is the sustainable resources, not the trees, that are the true wealth of the rainforest, they are working with the native people on developing projects that are sustainable and income-producing. Aveda is indeed a triple bottom-line business, and it is a stunning example of how concern for people and the planet pays off in the long run. In partnership with Conservation International, a nonprofit environmental organization, Aveda is helping local communities develop businesses that conserve their natural resources. Local workers gather fallen Brazil nuts from the forest and extract oil from the nuts. The leftover meal is combined with wheat protein to create a pure plant-derived protein, ideal for use in Aveda hair care products. According to Conservation International, Aveda's project funding, training, and market support provide critical enabling conditions for viable, sustainable enterprises in tropical Peru. In the eastern Amazonian region of Brazil, women gather to collect nuts from lush, new-growth babaçu palms, then sit under shade trees and break the hard shells with a stick over axe blades adjusted to their legs. 20 years ago, when many people were forced from the land, while vast sections of forest were burned and cleared for cattle ranching, these women fiercely resisted, standing up to clear cutters, tractors, and guns to protect their palm forest. Now they are partnering with Aveda, learning to process babaçu organically into a richly foaming cleansing ingredient known as babaçu betaine. Aveda has financed the construction of a babaçu processing facility, a soap-making facility, and a paper press for processing babaçu fibers. They have also funded training in processing and management. With Aveda support, Brazilian peasants have begun a living pharmacy project to produce plant-based medicines, and one collective is becoming a certifying agency in organic agriculture. In this way, the native communities are not reliant on Aveda alone for financial wellness as they pursue environmentally sustainable means of economic development. In the United States, companies are notoriously resource-intensive. U.S. companies use twice the energy of Japan and Germany, produce 32 truckloads of waste for every truckload of goods we make, use twice the energy to produce $1 worth of goods as other industrialized nations, and extract, move, waste, and burn 4 million pounds of material to feed the demands of the average middle-class American family. Evolutionary biologist Elizabeth Sahtouris reminds us that global cooperation is occurring every day in the arts and travel, in money exchange, in sciences and communications, but when it comes to economics, there's a problem. She writes, "Suppose our body's northern industrial organs could exploit the bone marrow all over the body for its raw material blood cells. They are then swept up into the heart-lung system where the blood is purified and oxygen is added. Suppose now that the heart distribution center demands a price for blood and some organs cannot afford it. Could our bodies stay healthy in such a system?" Triple Bottom Line reporting was devised in 1994 by Sustainability, a London think tank. The idea behind it is that companies that want to be successful in the long term should be able to meet society's demand for goods and services without destroying natural and social capital. The assumption is that there are three forms of capital that contribute to the success of a business and, in turn, should receive a return on investment. Other than cash capital, there is natural capital and social capital. Many companies have already discovered that waste reduction leads to direct and significant cost savings, but those who treat waste as natural capital that should receive a return on investment are thinking more originally and profiting more significantly. The United States Postal Service earned revenues of $6.6 million in 1 year from the sales of recyclable materials. Bell Atlantic recovered 30,000 tons of material from obsolete equipment and sold it for $25 million. Quad Graphics recycled 146,000 tons of paper in 1 year, saving $12.5 million in disposal fees. The public utility company, Exelon, generated nearly $4 million in operational savings through material recycling in 2004. Not only are they reducing greenhouse gas emissions by converting landfill gas to energy, they are also recycling 100% of the byproducts of coal combustion at their fossil generating stations. IKEA requires all of its stores to reuse, recycle, or produce energy from 75% of their waste. In 1975, 3M began running its Pollution Prevention Pays program, which has generated over $750 million in first-year savings over the last 2 decades. GreenBiz.com reports that Procter & Gamble saved $1 million with a variety of nationwide energy-efficient plans, working with their partner, Synergy Solutions, a company that works with businesses on turning their energy challenges into cost-saving opportunities. Baxter International, the global medical products and services company that produced the first portable kidney dialysis machine and the first commercially manufactured intravenous solutions, has been on the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index and the Dow Jones Sustainability North American Index for 7 consecutive years. The Dow Jones Sustainability Indices are the world's first benchmarks tracking the financial performance of leading companies in terms of sustainability. Baxter International has 67 manufacturing facilities located in 28 countries. Ron Meisen, Baxter's Senior Director for Environment, Health, and Safety Engineering, affirmed that improvements in energy conservation and emissions reductions are possible without huge investment. According to him, a key driver for the proactive initiatives at Baxter has been the realization that sound environmental practices can contribute to, and in some cases, drive competitive advantage. In his opinion, companies that have been forward-looking on this issue are in the best position to build upon the momentum they have created and better compete on a global basis. He reported that by driving greater operating efficiencies, by piloting and adopting new technologies, and by sharing ideas and best practices within the company and through collaborations and voluntary programs sponsored by the EPA and others, Baxter has achieved a 35% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, a 22% improvement in energy efficiency, and savings and cost avoidance totaling several millions of dollars each year. In 2004 alone, he estimated their energy savings and cost avoidance exceeded $9 million. We learned of the Green Suppliers Network and the impact it was having in other industries, like the automotive industry, and we were immediately attracted to the program, said Meissen. As a result of these changes, the facility estimates it has saved in excess of $100,000 per year in utility costs. While $100,000 a year might not seem like a big number, when you consider that we have 67 manufacturing facilities alone, these kinds of projects and incremental savings quickly add up to much larger numbers and do make a difference. As businesses are discovering that it pays to be concerned about society, a growing number of companies are investing in ideas that have clear development benefits, especially in terms of creating opportunities for people. Jeffrey Colvin, in an article for Fortune magazine, writes that companies today are doing more of what the activists want than they ever have done before. But it's not because they're being socially responsible. It's because they're listening to the markets. He claims that as the world has become more virulently capitalist, it has also become more concerned about the environment, child labor, and human rights, with more consumers basing their buying decisions on who made their Nike shoes or where ExxonMobil got its gasoline or what McDonald's does with its paper waste. Another thing he mentions is that more and more employees want to know what they do at work is good and right in some larger sense. Consumers care and employees care. That means equity markets care. And that means CEOs care. Thus, for example, we see Ford and British Petroleum, formerly monsters in the view of social responsibility types, working hard to greenify themselves. Some of what they've done is real and some is window dressing, but the fact is that Ford Chairman William Clay Ford got a standing ovation from the Coalition for Environmentally Responsible Economies. And BP CEO John Brown gets plenty of media calls seeking his comment on all kinds of environmental matters. That would have been unimaginable a few years ago. Even DuPont, once considered one of America's worst polluters, has seen the light. While it set out a decade ago to curb pollution and reduce waste, it now has a new mission: to own a collection of businesses that can go on forever without depleting natural resources. When it comes to triple bottom line reporting, DuPont supports the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, as the best format for reporting data on economic, environmental, and social performance. Once we committed to sustainability, we started hearing from socially responsible investment communities who were interested in our progress, said Dawn Rittenhouse, DuPont's Director of Sustainable Development. In the mid-90s, as part of the conversation on sustainable growth, we were asked if DuPont was willing to support a standardization in reporting. Joining GRI was part of that process. Started in 1997, GRI was established in response to the growing need for common standards to report against, an international agreement in this area. It is fast becoming the de facto standard defining the triple bottom line, according to Alan Fels, Dean of the Australia and New Zealand School of Government. Within 18 months of its founding, GRI had 380 members. A look at its website today shows a membership of 728 members, including some of the world's top countries and a number of national governments. These are telling figures, given that as recently as 7 years ago, the concept of sustainability reporting did not even exist. The accountability rating, which rates sustainability reports from the Fortune Global 100, finds significant growth in sustainability reporting. Almost three-quarters, 72%, of G100 companies issued sustainability reports by 2004, whereas less than half had done so by 2003. The escalation trend is most conspicuous in the USA, where the percentage of companies involved in GRI reporting rose from 18% to a remarkable 49% in 1 year. Also conspicuous was the dearth of U.S. companies in the top sustainability report ratings. Hewlett-Packard was the sole U.S.-based company in the top 10, which included BP, Shell, Toyota, and Unilever, among others. The GRI points out that the socially responsible investment, SRI, community has grown remarkably over the last 24 months. For the SRI community, the GRI reporting framework is increasingly seen as a key tool to progress in many of the areas and sectors of interest to this group. It seems that we're reaching a tipping point in the matter of sustainability reporting as more and more CEOs step out as thought leaders, writers, and speakers on the subject. DuPont CEO Edgar Woolard helped to instigate things when he wrote in 1990, "The green economies and lifestyles of the 21st century may be conceptualized by environmental thinkers, but they can only be actualized by industrial corporations. Industry has a next century vision of integrated environmental performance. Not every company is there yet, but most are trying. Those that aren't trying won't be a problem long term, simply because they won't be around long term. That is the new competitive reality." Woolard was quoted in the book Eco-Efficiency, written by two other CEOs who are committed to conscious commerce, Livio DeSimone, CEO and chair of 3M, and Frank Popoff, chair of Dow Chemical. And DuPont's current CEO, Charles Holliday Jr., has recently co-authored the EcoWise Walking the Talk, the business case for sustainable development. These authors all speak to the role of business in initiating practices that are environmentally sound, stressing the benefit of partnerships with government, associations, and nonprofits in designing more sustainable systems and applications. One organization that's doing just this is Redefining Progress, an Oakland, California-based think tank that works with a broad variety of partners to shift the economy and public policy toward sustainability. In October 2004, they released a groundbreaking state-by-state analysis of the job creation potential of a smart energy policy, which is viewable on their website, redefiningprogress.org. The report provides a comprehensive new policy package that would stimulate the creation of new jobs, approximately 1.4 million new jobs by 2025, while lowering energy bills that will save U.S. consumers an astounding $170 billion per year. Another development that has emerged to support sustainable farming practices around the world is fair trade labeling. It was created in the Netherlands in the late 1980s when Max Havelaar launched the first Fair Trade Consumer Guarantee label in 1986 on coffee sourced from Mexico. The United States consumes 1/5 of all the world's coffee, making it the largest consumer in the world. But few Americans have an idea of the hardships coffee growers regularly endure. Many small coffee farmers receive prices for their coffee that are less than the cost of production. Coffee prices have plummeted and are currently around 60 to 70 cents per pound, making it nearly impossible for farmers to maintain their land and their families, while coffee companies are free to decide whether to lower consumer prices or pocket the difference. Fair trade is a viable solution to this crisis, assuring consumers that the coffee we drink was purchased under fair conditions. To become fair trade certified, an importer must meet stringent international criteria, paying a minimum price per pound of $1.26, providing much-needed credit to farmers, and providing technical assistance, such as help transitioning to organic farming. Fair trade for coffee farmers means community development, health, education, and environmental stewardship. Since 1999, the market for fair trade certified coffee has grown by an average of over 70% each year, a sign that consumers are making their voices heard. No matter how many people complain about the ubiquitous Starbucks, you have to give them credit for being a stand-up corporation. This year, Starbucks will purchase 10 million pounds of fair trade certified coffee, making it North America's largest purchaser of fair trade certified coffee. Next year, the company plans to purchase 12 million pounds. In 2004, Starbucks paid an average price of $1.20 for all of its green unroasted coffee, a price 74% higher than the average New York C commodity market price. In addressing the social capital aspect of the triple bottom line, Starbucks is setting a sterling example in the health benefits department. They spend $200 million a year on insurance for their 80,000 U.S. employees, more than they do on all the raw materials needed to brew their coffee, according to Chairman Howard Schultz. Schultz was part of a group that included CEOs from Verizon, Costco, Honeywell, and Pitney Bowes who went to Congress in October to spark some interest in controlling healthcare costs. Each of the companies offers health insurance to virtually all its employees despite the skyrocketing costs. We want to tell the story in a way that other companies can see that you can make money and do the right thing by taking care of your people, Schultz said during a meeting with Senator Patty Murray from Washington. Schultz's main argument is that companies can be profitable while being morally responsible. He credited their benefits policy as a key reason for high productivity and low employee turnover, which has led to extraordinary profitability. According to Schultz, Starbucks stock is up almost 4,000% in 13 years and surged 80% in 2004. Companies around the country are learning that they can get a higher return on their social capital if they value and respond to the needs of the people they employ. At Triage Consulting, a healthcare consulting firm in San Francisco, their consultants typically work Monday through Thursday out of town for 4 months at a stretch. As a reward, the company picks up the tab for one of 3 options on the weekend. The employees can fly home, fly to another city, or have a family member or friend flown into their location for the weekend. And for every month consultants spend out of town, they bank 1 day toward a sabbatical to take at the end of their 4th year. At Green Mountain Coffee Roasters in Waterbury, Vermont, employees can take lunchtime yoga classes in the company meditation center. And in Berkeley, California, at Cliff Bar, they can improve their rock climbing skills on the indoor climbing wall hovering over their cubicles. Discovery Communications in Silver Spring, Maryland, opened an on-site health and wellness center complete with a nurse practitioner and physician. On opening day, 100 employees signed up for physicals. The center also provides routine prescriptions during flu season and sponsors a skin screening day and special wellness programs for men and pregnant women. Last year, 1,000 employees took part in their annual Healthy Living competition and lost a total of 5,000 pounds. According to the article, the center has shown a good return on investment, a savings of $600,000 in direct and indirect costs. Hyperion, a software company in Santa Clara, California, initiated a Drive Clean to Drive Change program and gives employees $5,000 toward the purchase of a hybrid or other fuel-efficient car. Triple bottom line reporting is an idea that can and probably will be debated for years. Some skeptics say these social responsibility measures are little more than public relations tactics to divert attention from corporate corruption. Detractors say it's an unworkable concept, that nobody has actually proposed a way to use the data on social performance to calculate some kind of net social bottom line. Their issue is with metrics and measurability, and with the difficulty of achieving global agreement. There is also the view that organizations contribute most to the welfare of society when they focus on what they do best. Let business do business, they say, and do not divert attention away from its core competency. On the other hand, proponents of triple bottom line reporting argue that Earth's carrying capacity is at risk, and they see a need for comprehensive reform in global financial institutions in order to avoid planetary catastrophes. The primary benefit of measuring social and environmental deficits would be first to see what needs to be addressed, then to decide ways and means to address them. With the emergence of green economies and agreement on definition of terms such as full cost accounting, natural capital, and social capital, the prospect of coming up with formal metrics for ecological and social loss or risk is growing closer every day. As usual, both sides are right, but only partly so. And there is no point in arguing. The invitation here is to take this idea into your heart and see how it feels. How would it feel to run a business or work for a business that cared as much about people and the earth as it did about profit? How would that change your life, your commitments at work, your relationship to your family? How would it feel to be part of an organization or group that took a stand for the environment or for a particular social issue and actually created a partnership with a business to make something happen that was good for the world? Nothing will ever come of arguments over triple bottom line accounting, but whole new vistas can open up when we ponder it in our imagination. The threshold we're at right now is a precious one. The whole world is in our hands, and every one of us has the power to act on that or not. If we do, what will change is us. What will save is ourselves. We will not change the minds of anyone with our thoughts and statistics. Think of the last time you changed your mind about something, or were moved to action or brought to tears. What was the cause of that? If you have gained authority in any matter, personal, undeniable, undaunted authority, think about how that happened, what you had to release, what you had to claim, what you had to suffer to come into your own power in that matter. Transformation happens when our hearts break open, when we surrender and reach out. And it is this final act, this reaching out, that opens the door to healing and change. As a people, we are being broken open by the tragedies and travesties of these times. We are individually and collectively confronting the brokenness of every American institution, from education to politics, healthcare to home buying. If we take a look at how our country is treating its own human capital, the news is heartbreaking. If Americans without health insurance were a nation, the population would be bigger than Canada, plus Michigan, Montana, New Hampshire, and Vermont. We number 29 in the World Health Organization's Healthy Life Expectancy ranking and do worse than 36 countries in child mortality under age 5. The National Coalition on Healthcare has offered 4 different scenarios for universal health coverage. The first 3 scenarios would net $320 to $370 billion in savings over the first 10 years. And the fourth would save $1.1 trillion. But these scenarios have gone nowhere. Although worker productivity rose 78% between 1973 and 2004, full-time worker pay averaged 11% less than 1973's average worker pay. The multinational monitor reports that if the minimum wage had increased as quickly as CEO pay since 1990, it would be at $15.76 an hour. Business Week reported that more than 28 million people, about a quarter of the workforce between the ages of 18 and 64, earn less than $9.04 an hour, which translates into a full-time salary of $18,800 a year, which is below the federal poverty line for a family of 4. Overall, 63% of U.S. families below the federal poverty line have 1 or more workers, according to the Census Bureau, and the majority possess high school diplomas and even attended some college. According to the U.S. Conference on Mayors Hunger and Homelessness Survey, 17% of the homeless were employed, as were 34% of adults requesting emergency food service. Though 1 out of 8 Americans lives below the meager poverty level, Congress has had 7 pay raises since 1997, increasing their yearly salary from $133,000 to $162,000. The richest 1% of households owns more wealth than the bottom 90% combined, and tax cuts for them will cost more than $120 billion, about the same amount budgeted for the Environmental Protection Agency, education, housing and urban development, and Veterans Affairs combined for the year 2006. If the United States were a company using triple bottom line reporting, things would have to change drastically to ensure its total profitability. The signs point to serious unsustainability and erosion at the very foundations. But did anything happen to you when you heard all these statistics? Did you feel inspired to do anything? Did you feel like talking about it with anyone? Were you mad, sad? Was it exhausting or energizing? What about when you hear this conversation that happens in the year 2050 between a boy and his grandfather? "Grandpa, did you know it was happening?" "Well, sort of. There was news about it, but it didn't seem too real." "How did it feel when you couldn't eat the fish anymore?" "Well, that was hard. We never thought that would happen." "Didn't they warn you?" "Not really. I guess some tried to, but not in a big way. Not like on television or even much in the newspapers. You had to really want to know, I guess. People just didn't care that much. We were pretty busy then, pretty caught up in our own lives. What about the forest? Didn't you know how much we needed them just to breathe? People never thought about that connection, son. We needed that timber. Companies needed it for their business. That's what was important back then, business. But why would you let them take away everything we needed? Why did you let them make all those stupid things out of plastic? Why didn't you save some of the oil for us? I swear we never thought we'd use it up. We weren't trained to think about the future. No one taught us how to think. We did the best we could do day by day. I thought you were smart. You had your own business, didn't you? Yes. If you were so smart, why didn't you stop them from ruining all the water? Didn't you ever think I might want to swim like you used to? It's not like that. Oh, yes, it is. If you were so smart, you would have known what was happening, but you didn't care. It's your fault. It's not my fault, son. There were millions of us here. Everyone was to blame. Then why didn't they stop it? Why did they ruin things for us? Why didn't you care enough to do something? Why? 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 That question, why, is coming at us from the future even now, from every one of our descendants, who will wonder what their ancestors did to keep the world safe for them. And just as we are preparing for our own personal futures, so should we prepare for theirs. Triple Bottom Line reporting was one person's suggestion, the culmination of one person's reflection on how we might standardize a level of corporate accountability. It is a beginning, not an ending, but it is doing the job of stirring up interest in different ways of doing business. Google hits for the term triple bottom line numbered 15,600 in August 2002. Today, they are up to 5,040,000. In the long run, it will most likely morph into another form that is more evolved and acceptable to the whole. But for now, it's a good place to start, for it guides our thinking beyond the present and beyond the confines of our own selfish ambitions. It is a community-minded approach, and nothing less than that will move us collectively as one country and one world from these dire conditions we have created. Our solutions live in the body politic, and they are waiting to be unfolded in our honest and heartfelt conversations with each other. It is not more research that we need, but more relating, like seeds in the deep soil, when we break open and acknowledge our need for each other. When we look around and see that our life depends on the earth, the water, and the purest of air, then we will naturally evolve to the next step. But we cannot fulfill our destiny in private. We are part and parcel of this planetary organism, each of us a cell in the great Mother Earth, and like the cells in our own bodies, we must be in constant, conscious communication to remain viable. The poet and philosopher Wendell Berry reminds us, "It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work, and that when we no longer know which way to go, we have begun our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings." These are indeed baffling times, and we have come at last to the real work, to collectively create new systems, new businesses, and new partnerships that will result in a world that is healthy and whole. Chapter 14. Insight to Action. In 1981, I was working as a picture framer in a mall in Syracuse, New York. I had been involved in the peace movement, which was quite active then due to an escalating global buildup of nuclear weapons. As a photographer and concerned citizen, I attended and photographed demonstrations for peace throughout the U.S. and Canada. Then I assembled my images into a slideshow, put them to music, and showed them in every venue that welcomed me. In many ways, it was a healing thing to do. For one, I was actively taking a stand for something I believed in. So I felt like an agent of change rather than a victim of circumstances. And then there was a sense of being part of a community, a diverse and daring group of people who operated with a belief that their voices mattered. It was democracy in action, and I felt proud to be a part of every demonstration, rallying for a world with fewer arms. One day someone inadvertently left a copy of The 100th Monkey on my workbench, and I read it on my lunch hour. It was about a series of experiments done with monkeys off the coast of Japan in the 1950s. But this paragraph is what caught my attention. When a certain critical number achieves an awareness, this new awareness may be communicated from mind to mind. When only a limited number of people know of a new way, it may remain the consciousness property of these people. But there is a point at which if only one more person tunes into a new awareness, a field is strengthened so that this awareness reaches almost everyone. Individuals can communicate private information to each other even though located in different places. The strength of this extrasensory communication can be amplified to a powerfully effective level when the consciousness of the 100th person is added. Something lit up like a light bulb in my mind. Maybe I could be the 100th person. Maybe I could take my slides and my music and show them to people around the world. I didn't know any other languages, but a picture is worth 1,000 words, and music opens people's hearts. So maybe my just being there, creating an occasion for people to come together, would strengthen the field for world peace. I went right across the street to the nearest bank and opened a savings account. "I'm going around the world," I said to the teller. "I'm making a peace pilgrimage as soon as I get $5,000. It took a year and a half to save it, working 2 jobs, but I left for Japan in 1983 with $5,000 in my pocket and 200 rolls of film in my backpack. I figured out how to do it as I went along because I was inspired. That one little book caused me to think differently, to see how I fit into the whole picture. It opened up the world to me, literally. And as a result, I met with thousands of people in 15 countries, in schools, office buildings, churches, living rooms, and boardrooms. When people saw the images and heard the music, they were inspired because that's what art does. It opens us up to our own greatness. It thaws our frozenness and dissolves the barriers that keep us separate. And my being out there alone on this quest, determined and committed as I was, that too inspired people because it is our nature to be moved by each other's loving acts. When we see someone else turn an insight into action, it stirs a memory within us of our own power to do the same. We think, if she can, I can. If he can, I can. And our own creative gears start grinding away. Each of us is a teacher to someone and a student of someone. Who is teaching you these days, and what are you learning? And who is learning from you, and what are you teaching? The formula for original thinking is wisdom plus intelligence, heart plus brain. We get an impulse from the heart zone, an insight, an intuitive feeling, a desire to be useful, and we have to mesh that with a multidimensional intelligence that takes the insight to its next level. This is the alchemy of creation, this transformation of a thought into a physical reality. Some of the questions we could benefit from asking ourselves are, what is the gift I have to offer? What do I know that can be leveraged so as to add value to someone else? Who might benefit from the experience and knowledge I have? What might I learn from them? What is the best vehicle to share what I know? What do I want to get back in return? How can this be a self-sustaining enterprise? Who could I partner or collaborate with to expand the reach of this idea? What arena do I want to work in? Local, statewide, national, global? What communities have a stake in this issue, and how shall I engage with them? When this idea is fully realized, what will be the impact? Another instigator of citizen action is author Thom Hartmann, who brings his radical middle viewpoint to the public airwaves on his nationally syndicated radio program, thomhartmann.com. Hartmann believes that cultural change begins with new insights propagating through enough people to reach a critical mass, the 100th monkey theory. When we change our stories, then we change the world, he says. That's what inspires us, the stories we tell each other. A historian at heart, Hartmann hit the mother lode when he decided to research the evolution of corporate personhood, which was supposedly granted to corporations in the 1886 Supreme Court case Santa Clara versus Southern Pacific Railroad. When he looked at the actual case documents, however, Hartmann discovered that this was never stated by the court, and the Chief Justice ruled the matter out in consideration of the case. The claim that corporations are persons was added by the court reporter who wrote the introduction to the decision known as headnotes, which have no legal standing. It appears that corporations may have acquired personhood through some crafty persuasion. As it turns out, both the Supreme Court judge, Justice Stephen J. Field, and the court reporter, J.C. Bancroft Davis, were well connected to the railroads. Davis had served as president of the board for a railroad company, and Justice Field had ruled repeatedly in favor of his patrons, the railroad companies, in previous lower court cases. The language used in the Santa Clara case headnotes even matched the language Field used in earlier cases, said Hartmann, who has in his personal library 12 books by Davis, mostly original editions. The books display Davis's close alliance with the railroad industry, and they support the argument that Davis injected the personhood statement deliberately to achieve rights for the corporations who had failed to achieve them in litigation. So it appears that the 14th Amendment, drafted to protect the rights of African Americans after the Civil War, which was passed by Congress, voted on and ratified by the states, and signed into law by the President, was reinterpreted in 1886 for the benefit of corporations. The notion that corporations are persons has never been voted into law by the people or by Congress, and all the court decisions endorsing it derive from the precedent of the 1886 case from Davis's error, said Hartmann. Simultaneously, A concern is rising up in the public consciousness over the potential damage these corporations can cause if they are solely profit-driven and not accountable to the commons. Groups of people are coming together across the country and organizing data banks, resource materials, curricula for teachers, and networks for citizens who want to become more active in shaping the culture that will be our legacy. A brilliant demonstration of collective genius is underway, providing unlimited portals for participation and platforms for thought leaders who can articulate a vision for America that works for the children, for the poor, for the earth, and for business. According to visionary and social scientist Dwayne Elgin, author of several books, including the best-selling Voluntary Simplicity, the media is having a massive impact on our social brain, and most of us are unaware of its effect. On his website, simpleliving.net, Elgin writes that it is the citizens who literally own the airwaves. And if programming goes through the public airwaves, the public has the right to take an active role in choosing the programming. Unlike cable and public television, television broadcasters, primarily CBS, ABC, NBC, and Fox, in local communities in the U.S., have a unique contract with the people of each community. Based on legislation dating back to 1927, TV broadcasters have an overriding obligation to serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. This duty to serve the public before their own pocketbooks has been affirmed by more than a half-century of law in the U.S. Supreme Court, Congress, and the FCC. Elgin encourages citizens to develop tools of mass communication, television viewer feedback forms, that would provide a democratic means for the public to express its collective interests with regard to how its social brain is to be programmed. He predicts that an extraordinary cultural shift will occur when we begin using the public airwaves to communicate to broadcasters about their legal responsibility to serve the public interest. If the public does not assert its overriding rights and responsibilities as mature citizen viewers, then the mass media will continue to program the mindset of our society for commercial success and evolutionary failure, he writes. The 25,000 commercials we see each year are contributing to a schizophrenic state that has a deadly potential. On the one hand, we're constantly exposed to ads that say we need more of everything. On the other hand, if we continue down the slippery slope of unbridled consumerism, we will devour the very resources that more rightfully belong to our children. In a radio interview, Joseph Chilton Pierce reported that when Ralph Nader approached Bob Pittman, who invented MTV, and asked him if he realized the profound influence they were having on 14-year-olds, the guy leaned back and said, "Ralph, we don't influence 14-year-olds, we own them." Every advertiser knows that before you can convince anyone of anything, you shatter their existing mental set and then restructure an awareness along lines which are useful to you. You do this with a very few simple techniques like fast-moving images, jumping among attention focuses, and switching moods, says former San Francisco advertising executive Jerry Mander. Why do you think they call it programming? A 1966 U.S. Court of Appeals ruling states, "Nor need the public feel that in taking a hand in broadcasting they are unduly interfering in the private business affairs of others. On the contrary, their interest in television programming is direct and their responsibilities important. Under our system, the interests of the public are dominant. They are the owners of the channels of television. indeed, of all broadcasting. And in a Supreme Court decision in 1969, the court states, "It is the right of the viewers and listeners, not the right of the broadcasters, which is paramount." In Creative Evolution, Henry Bergson wrote, "A new system of philosophy will only be built up by the collective and progressive effort of many thinkers, of many observers also, completing, correcting, and improving one another." It may very well be that the answers to our most burning questions will surface in the context of our simple and honest conversations with each other. Communication and relationship are the building blocks of original thinking. They spark the fire, fan the flames, spread the warmth, transmit the light. It is through dialogue and intimacy with others that we experience the gift of communion consciousness and the subtle dissolution of barriers that once seemed to separate us. It is in the safe company of trusted companions and colleagues that we can unfold our brilliant potential, unshackle our wild imaginations, and release our newfound energy and insights into the world. It is in solitude that we incubate our creativity, but it is in community that we express it. Thought leaders traverse constantly between the private and the public, deepening themselves in silence and study, then reaching outward with awareness gained on the inner journey, merging with others to synthesize and share, collaborate and create. Their energy then is whole and integral. Their intelligence is embodied, and in their words and every action is a power that others identify as a force for good. It is this integration of inter and outer, self and other, insight and action that fuels the mind of original thinkers and fosters the potential for thought leadership. For every person mentioned in this chapter, there are millions of others equally committed, equally creative, spreading their ideas like seeds across the fertile landscape, some never knowing if they've taken root or not. Nor did I know on that journey around the world how it mattered or what difference it made. For it is only the future that can measure our gains. But I took comfort that day in November 1989 when I first heard they were dismantling the Berlin Wall. I remembered being there, showing my slides, talking with people about the possibility of peace, driven by that notion in The 100th Monkey that just one person could strengthen the field and have an impact on global consciousness. As all those bricks came tumbling down, I took personal credit for at least one. Chapter 15. You Are the Help. I pulled my car into the breakdown lane and grabbed my video camera. There was a flock of birds above Highway 194 that I couldn't keep my eyes off. There were hundreds of them performing a sky ballet that took my breath away. When I first looked, they were all white. Then they swooped down en masse, rolled over, and suddenly turned silver. When I looked back again, they flew off in a new direction, and this time they all looked black. Leaning up against my car hood, I turned on the camera and zoomed in on the flock. I had just focused in when I heard the sound of metal crashing into metal. Then everything became silent. I had one brief image of three things: my camera, my car, and myself flying through the air. Then everything went black. When I came to, I was underneath my car, lying prostrate and facing the rear wheel. I lifted my head enough to see my outstretched arms and feared immediately that I was paralyzed. I tried to wiggle my fingers and was amazed when they moved. Then I tried my feet and my toes. They moved too. I can get out of here, I thought. I just have to shimmy out. I tried to drag my body forward, but I couldn't move it. I was under the exhaust system, pinned to the ground, and the muffler was burning away my flesh. Now I realized I had to dig my way out, but it was high desert land, and with all my might, I could hardly make a scratch in the dry, hard dirt. It was then I realized I was about to witness my own death. A great sorrow filled me at first when I thought of my mother, my family, my friends having to hear I was killed in a terrible accident. Next came the assessment of how I had done with my life. Did I have regrets? No. Was anything unfinished, unforgiven? No. Was I proud of the wake I left behind? Had I done everything I could do to contribute my gifts? Had I given all my thanks to everyone I was grateful for? Yes, I thought, I did the best I could do. If there's anyone to report to, I'll be proud to report. It was time then to let go. But how could I do this? I wanted to live. I started to fear, not so much the unknown, but the known coming to an end. Then I thought of what I'd heard about the Native American elders who went to the mountaintop when their time had come, and they calmly waited and peacefully released. And I thought about the Eskimos I'd heard of, who went off to lie in a drift of snow when they knew the transition was close at hand. I can do this, I thought. If they could do it, I can do it. And I closed my eyes, took one last deep, conscious breath, and began to slip backward, into the silence, into the source. I was going home. Then I heard the frantic shouts. Is anybody there? Is anybody alive? Suddenly, I was back under the car again. The voices continued to call. Is there anybody there? Is anyone alive? I'm here, I called back, barely audible. I'm alive. I heard the sound of running feet. Where are you? Under the car, by the back tire. I looked up and saw their legs. 2 men. Oh my God, they cried out. Wait there! We'll go get help. Don't go, I pleaded. You are the help. Just lift up the car. There was a terrible silence, broken by their fearful announcement. We can't! We need help! Yes, you can, I cried. You can. Just lift it up. Now. And in one miraculous moment, they became the gods we are capable of being. They put their hands under the fender, and on the count of 3, lifted the car as if it were an eagle's feather. Then 2 hands reached down to pull me out. They belonged to the man who had hit my car going 70 miles an hour. The great gift that this event gave me was twofold. First, it allowed me the chance to look at my life from a different perspective, to assess it as a whole and determine if I needed any mid-course corrections. Secondly, and most importantly, it taught me a great lesson, that we are the help. When those men approached the wreckage, the first thing they experienced was their helplessness. They did not believe in their own powers and wanted to run off in search of help. They were caught in the story we've been told all our lives, that help is somewhere else. Power and strength are somewhere else. The solutions are somewhere else, beyond us, outside of us. But when they heard that voice, you are the help, some shift happened. Illusions dropped. Doubt was suspended, and in its place rushed a huge and mighty force, a new belief that rippled through every cell in their bodies and infused their beings with whatever strength was called for. Whatever is needed at this time in history to right this world, to right our own personal and precious lives, we have these things within us. We do not need science and technology to save us. We do not need government and religion to save us. We do not need more information and faster computers to save us. What we need is to abandon our notions that solutions exist anywhere but in ourselves. If I look at my life and find it lacking in adventure or challenge or joy, the solution to that is right inside me, dwelling as a potential, awaiting a decision, a decisive action. If I look at my business, my affiliations, my family, and feel uninspired, unseen, or disconnected, the way to wholeness is inscribed on my heart, written on every cell in my body, waiting for me to look within and turn my ear to the great below. No one becomes a visionary who does not first look within. And none of us can inspire another till we first learn how to inspire ourselves. Coming to grips with the power we have is a necessary step to original thinking. It takes courage. It calls for reflection. It means letting go of the mediocre to create the magnificent. All those voices in your head, let them go like a bunch of balloons. Then remember those men coming upon the wreckage, thinking themselves powerless until they heard the voice coming up from below, and then lifted that car without a thought.
Jan Phillips is the author of several award-winning books and has produced a number of videos and CDs to inspire original thinking and insightful action. She does keynotes and workshops around the world, and you can visit her website, janphillips.com, for a listing of her events and products and to subscribe to her free monthly newsletter.